Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Cara's Fast Natural English podcast. This is episode number 11. I'm on my own again this week, and I wanted to give you a bit of language learning encouragement because maybe you listen to these podcasts and think, oh God, I don't understand this woman. I'm never going to understand spoken English. How is it possible? I'll never get there, and other negative things. Oh, well, I hope you're not that negative. So I wanted to share an experience that happened to me when I went back to university and I had to study Spanish. So in 2011, for various reasons, I decided to take up my studies again, and I did a master's degree in international business with languages. So everybody had to do English, so that was kind of cool. And then you had to pick another language. So the choice was Spanish, German, Russian, or Italian. And the only language I had a bit of experience with at university level was Spanish. Now, remember that this is in France. This is at university in France. So the methods were quite traditional. We had to do a lot of translation. So that meant that in my Spanish language classes, I had to do a lot of translation from Spanish to French, and even worse, French to Spanish. So yeah, that was pretty tough because at that point I had only done 1 year of intensive Spanish from 2003 to 2004. And well, when I knew I was going back to university, I, started revising some Spanish, but yeah, I definitely had a big handicap compared to the other students who had been studying Spanish for several years and who were used to doing translations. But anyway, I thought, well, if I want to study this degree, I'm going to have to get on with it. So we had our first translation test. So this is in the class where we translated from French into Spanish. So in theory, like I could understand the French, that wasn't a problem. But the difficulty was that, the marking is really strict in translation. If you make kind of a conjugation mistake, or even if it's just something that looks like a spelling mistake, it can be quite heavily penalized. So I made lots of mistakes. I didn't even realize they were mistakes, to be honest. I was kind of applying some of the logic from French to Spanish. But, I managed to translate the text. I managed to produce something. And then when we got the results, well, I was a little disappointed when I saw on my paper that I got 5 out of 20. Can you imagine? 5 out of 20. And after a while, I just this was in the class, I kind of had enough and I just left and I went and locked myself in the toilet at university and had a little cry, and I was thinking to myself, what am I doing? Why am I here? I had quit my job. I had quit working to go back to university. So I was really worried, have I done the right thing? Was this a bad idea? Should I just give up now? And then after I went and spoke to the teacher and I discovered that, okay, obviously my mark of 5 out of 20 was the worst in the class, but she said that another student had got 6.5 out of 20, and that was somebody who had been studying Spanish for much longer and who had, who was used to doing these kinds of translation tests. So I immediately felt, well, a bit better. And so that kind of gave me encouragement for the next test. So I tidied up the mistakes that I made to make sure I wouldn't make them again. And in the next test, I got 9 out of 20. And for me, that was just a complete breakthrough. That was really incredible to go from 5 to 9. I was thrilled. And I think for the module as a whole, I got 11 out of 20 altogether. So for me, that was a really, really huge achievement. So I went from crying in the toilet to actually passing, my Spanish tests and my Spanish module. So I suppose the moral of the story here is to, measure yourself by your own standards and not by, other people's standards. If you're coming from the equivalent of 5 out of 20, then 9 out of 20 is going to be, a really significant achievement for you. So yeah, measure yourself by your own standards, and don't do what I did. Don't lock yourself in a toilet and cry. Talk to people about it, ask questions, and if you have questions about understanding spoken English, then you can ask me. That's what I'm here for. Don't suffer in silence or in a locked toilet cubicle, worrying about about how you're doing. Right, so that was my Spanish language learning confession. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. Make sure, if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or iTunes or Stitcher, make sure you go over to the blog where there are extra activities for you to do. Also, if you're not on my mailing list, make sure that you sign up, because people on the mailing list get the full transcript of every new podcast. So that is something you need to have in your inbox with each podcast. It will really help. Okay, thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.